Hi everybody, I'm Nicole Vulcan, editor of the Source Weekly, here with Shane Nelson. Shane, why don't you introduce yourself and tell everybody why you're running for sheriff?
Thank you for having me. My name's Shane Nelson. I am a 50-year resident of Deschutes County. I was born and raised here. My wife and 4 children also live in Deschutes County. I have been very blessed in growing up around here and getting to meet a lot of the members of our community and have a lot of great friends in many partners throughout Deschutes County. I graduated from Mountain View High School in 1988, went over to Oregon State University, graduated there with a Bachelor of Science in Speech Communication in 1993, and then came back to the area. I started my career in law enforcement with the Deschutes County Sheriff's Office, and I became a reserve deputy sheriff and volunteered my time starting in November of 1993. From there, I was hired full-time a year later in the patrol division as a deputy sheriff. I've worked all different parts of the county in patrol, went and was promoted to corporal in 1999, served in the criminal detective unit in the detective division for a couple of years before being promoted to patrol sergeant. I was promoted to patrol lieutenant in 2006 after being a patrol sergeant for a couple of years. I've served as the administrative lieutenant, and then I've also been the corrections division and operations division commander, captain overseeing both of those divisions before becoming the sheriff and serving the citizens of Deschutes County for now 5 years as their sheriff. I also have enjoyed being active in the community, volunteering as a youth sports coach, directing the youth football program in Redmond, and serving with the Pilot Butte Partners Board of Directors and overseeing local namesake in Pilot Butte. Also am active with the Oregon State Sheriff's Association and currently serve as their secretary.
Thanks. So we're going to cover a lot of ground in our time here in this beautiful park.
Excellent.
The first thing we want to dive into is just think of any critique you might have of your sheriff's office. What needs to be improved there?
Well, I can always think of plenty. I work with great people. The women and men that serve our community in their sheriff's office do a wonderful job. As a matter of fact, they are the ones out there that set our reputation. They are the professionals that are doing hard work to maintain community support and trust. I always say, though, we always strive to be better. We reach for excellence, and we can always reach just a little bit further and improve what we do. And one of the things that we've done a good job at is changing how we recruit, changing how we hire, do a more thorough background process, because we do want the best folks serving our community when it comes to such a high liability, high performance job. And I don't think there's anyone that disagrees law enforcement is an emergency business. So we want to make sure we get the best people. Now, along with that comes with you also need to promote the right people, retain the right people, demote the right people, and fire the right people. That's part of operating an organization. And simply put, we want the folks that are our teammates to be in line with our mission and values, because that's how we maintain community support. One of the things that we've tried to do over the last 3 years is I wanted to increase our teammates taking up counseling sessions and visiting with a counselor. I visit with a counselor. It's great to go and get things off your chest and share things with experts who can help you work through that. But it didn't really catch on. Part of that is I was told we have a lot of type A personalities working in law enforcement. They are entrepreneurs that are used to going out and fixing and solving issues. And so having to be told maybe we need help fixing and solving our own issues doesn't always take that well. And so we've made some adjustments. We have great partners in the Bend Police Department. My wife's an officer there. She's a tremendous mentor to me. And so I've taken a good look at their program, highly successful. Their wellness program really started by Chief Andy Jordan by allowing them to work out on duty. And so we've been trying to pull some of those concepts and make them our own. I wish we could have done that a little bit sooner, but everything takes time. But now we're on track where we've added a list of 10 counselors that can be readily accessed with picking up the phone. They're not on our payroll, but we pay the bill because it's important to have an outside source where these folks are sharing that information so they don't think it comes back to the office of the administration. Another concept of that is we're investing some money in some gym space because I want to encourage our teammates to go and stay physically fit. It's something that is the right thing to do for them and their families that support them. And that's another thing. We want counseling for family members as well because they're in public service right along with us. We don't want to forget about them. It's part of delivering great service. But we want them to stay healthy, which an added bonus is it reduces costs to insurance programs as well. And that can be, it can, limit the number of times they have to go to the doctor. And then if they stay sound in body, mind, and spirit, that means they're going to be a better family member. They're going to be able to be a healthier individual, which in turn means they're going to be a healthier teammate for the sheriff's office serving the citizens.
So that dovetails perfectly into the conversation around police reform that's happening nationwide right now. I have a few questions along that line.
Okay.
So I guess I'll just dive a little farther into it, go out of order here. What's your take on the notion of defunding the police, which really has evolved into a more detailed conversation around reallocation of resources?
Let me start by saying there's a lot of fine women and men that serve in the law enforcement profession, nearly 1 million across the country. I can speak about our office, and I will tell folks, you will have bad apples in every bunch. I don't care what business you're in. So I'll start off by saying it's important to be a nation of laws. It's important to follow the law, and that's a critical component to maintaining order. When you talk about defunding the police, I'm not familiar with these communities where we've had national incidents and can only speak in relation to our office. But questions I have when things like that happen, what was their relationship with their community beforehand? I talk about our great sheriff's office relationship with the 200,000 bosses we serve in this community. And that's the hard work from the women and men that I work with that are maintaining that relationship. So if you already have a reputation or a relationship for doing the right thing at the right time for the right reasons and being fair and utilizing discretion where you need to enforce the law and do what's best for the community, that buys you a lot of credibility for when you do have a stumble or you do make a mistake. I'm good at learning lessons. I mean, that is one of the only things I'm good at, and I'm okay with that because we are going to be a forever learner. So when you talk about defund the police, I think it has to be specific to a community. And I also don't look at it as defunding the police because you do need law enforcement and you need laws. I look at it more as how can you invest in proactive things that will help put your sheriff's office out of business? That would be your ultimate vision, that we wouldn't have to exist. I don't know that I'm so positive that I believe we'll ever get there, but that's what we should strive for because that means we'll always stay on our A game. That means we'll always be delivering superior public safety and customer service to our bosses. So to me, our sheriff's office already does that and has done that since I've been hired. We always look at alternative solutions. We always look at trying to utilize our resources to solve a problem. One example, safe gun storage program that our office announced. It was successful in Colorado. I thought, great, we should bring it here and see how it works. We haven't had anybody take us up on it yet. However, we offer it. And I think from the safe gun storage program, that's thinking proactively. How can we be there when someone is maybe in a mental health state where they're in crisis, they just don't feel like being around their firearms, or they're having company come over and they don't want a firearm to be around little kids. It's an option for them to go lodge that firearm and saves us a response for later. It's being proactive. Another thing, funding nearly $700,000 toward the stabilization center. That helps. That's the right thing to do for people to help them get back on track to being a productive citizen or help them become a productive citizen. So when you're doing these things, it's just a little hand up. You're still expecting folks to follow the rules, but it means they don't have to be unnecessarily input into the criminal justice system. It means they don't have to be unnecessarily lodged in the jail if there's an alternative resource. And that, to me, is what the defund the police movement is about. And I believe the Sheriff's Office, and I'll tell you, our partner agencies in the region, and most likely in the state of Oregon, are doing those types of things and looking forward.
So another one along the lines of the ongoing conversation around police reform, do you believe it's the sheriff's job or your office's job to meet with activist groups? And why, or at what point would you decide not to engage with a group like that?
So it is, I work for everybody. You know, I have 200,000 bosses. I also try and temper that with what's going to be effective. So when I sat down with Mr. Ricardo Waits, the Central Oregon Black Leaders Assembly, very nice gentleman, very diplomatic, very forward moving and positive about, hey, how can we improve? And I just really enjoy visiting with him and talking to him and hearing about his ideas. And matter of fact, gave me an opportunity. I was able to send announcements for Deputy Sheriff, and we're going to have an opening here soon. Send it to him because he said, hey, I will go recruit. He's looking to try and get scholarships for people, people of color, so that they can have some opportunities through him and his connections. And then I visited with Oscar and Liliana at Latino Community Association and Brad talking about sending them the announcements as well. And I sent them to Oscar, the announcements for Deputy Sheriff, because if you want to try and recruit, well, you've got to go look in sections and areas of demographics and visit with people who can help you recruit those folks. So they have been great conversations. They have been a huge help, and they have been actually good advisors on how we can be better at what we do. And having said that, there are some groups that I am choosing not to sit down with, and that's just because I always try and do a little research because I want conversations to be as productive as possible. I'll always take input. Please send me emails, call me, leave me phone messages, and we'll take that input. But there was a group that I declined their invitation, and it was because I'd researched some of their site and I didn't like the anti-law enforcement rhetoric and some of the posts, anti-law enforcement posts and rhetoric that were by some of the posters on their site.
Fair enough. Let's see. There's been some talk around body cams for the sheriff's office. As I understand it, there might be some resistance to having those introduced in your office. So just tell me your approach there.
Sure. I don't think that's accurate. I don't think
Okay.
there's any resistance to the office. As a matter of fact, I think there's a great positive outlook on it from our teammates. Our conversation about body cameras over the last 5 years has always been cost and balancing the effective outcome of it. So I think there's some great pros to having body cams. And as a matter of fact, if they were free, we'd have had them years ago. And so it's just one of those investment pieces where that's a lot of our boss's taxpayer money. And so we try and be cautious with that. So when I was visiting with the citizen advisory panel about that topic, one of the questions was, hey, how many complaints do you have a year? And how many tort claims or how many calls do you handle versus those complaints? And when we looked at it, we were approaching 80,000 calls a year for the patrol division, and we'd had, I think it was less than 30 complaints. And so visiting with them about that, it's well, okay, let's just keep it status quo. And it was in our revamp of our strategic plan to roll out and test them this year. And I'm staying with that plan. I'm staying with the strategic plan on that. And right now they're visiting with 3 vendors that had risen to the level to the top for RFP. And so they're having some discussions about that. But the plan is to invest some money and test 8 to 10 cameras this year. So I think it's going to be a good thing. And then we'll assess it after we have the testing process.
Gotcha. So part of the conversation around body cameras is that transparency and accountability in what your team is doing out there. What can the sheriff do to foster more accountability and transparency as it relates to discipline?
I think we can always be better at doing it. And of course, you always look into case law and the collective bargaining agreement. But when I look at it from the standpoint, I think we show how transparent we are. Me serving 5 years as sheriff, I have been very upfront when we have supervisors on leave. And I try not to share so many details that it hampers the integrity of the investigation, because that's just as important. But I feel like our bosses, when you're a supervisor, our bosses have a right to know what we're doing and what we're looking into and why we're looking into it, because we employ human beings. You cannot take the human out of human being, and nor would you want to. I also think that's why the ladies and gentlemen of the sheriff's office are good at what they do. So when you look at that, we want to temper it. We want to let our bosses know what we're doing to correct it, that we're aware of it, that we're looking into it. But I also understand that they don't want us to release so much information it damages the outcome or the integrity of the investigation. And so that's why I've chose to release information about supervisors when they go on administrative leave. And trust me, there's a process before that administrative leave takes place. And there's a process to decide whether you're going to do an internal affairs investigation. And in two of the supervisors' case that are on leave right now, there was criminal investigation that other agencies are handling prior to the completion of the internal affairs investigation. So I believe we balance that very well. I know we can always be better at what we do, and I know we will always be better, but right now I think we're very transparent.
Okay. So there are 3 open cases, as far as we are aware, for investigation of professional standards on file with the state from your office. Just, I guess you kind of touched on that already. What can be improved? Are there issues that are causing 3 different investigations to be out there right now?
The 3 different investigations that are out there right now, those folks are still on administrative leave, and the third one, who involves a represented individual by our association, that was released by a separate agency because that's also a criminal matter. So when I look back at when could we have had the first impact, or when could we have changed the behavior, or when could we have corrected that behavior or changed that path, I'll always come back to one thing, and sometimes it's hiring. Sometimes maybe we didn't do as good a background as we could have done. Sometimes we hired the wrong folks, which is why we were, those 3 individuals have been with our office for a while. And that's why, we've made some of those adjustments. But maybe it also links to law enforcement officer wellness. Do we need to be, and I'm talking years ago, did we need to be more in tune? Was there a better way to be more in tune and support that? Because I remember when I was hired, that wasn't something that was talked about. Yes, after you had a traumatic incident, we would have a debriefing. Some was, of course, required, those debriefings. But from the standpoint of encouragement of counseling, or it wasn't frowned upon, but it just wasn't encouraged. It wasn't talked about. And frankly, it was a business where, I've already mentioned, you were problem solvers. Mm-hmm. People call you when they don't know who else to call. People are serving time in our jail because they maybe didn't have an outlet to reach out to. And so our men and women serving in the jail as deputy sheriffs are there as a resource or a guide or a mentor. But we've got to make sure we take care of our people. And that's one of the hopes with increasing and improving the law enforcement officer health of the organization, health of the force program, improving that. I think that can help quite a bit. But at the end of the day, people make their own decisions, and people complete their own actions. And then it will just be for me, serving the community as their sheriff, to decide the outcome and consequence if appropriate.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about some other stuff. What type of emergency equipment do you believe is necessary for your department's operations, and should you have your own SWAT team?
So our office should have our own SWAT team, and it's just a matter of resources. Our SWAT team works in great coordination with the other 2 SWAT teams in the region. There's the Central Oregon Emergency Response Team. They do a wonderful job, make up of several different agencies, which is great if when they need to be ready and go call out. They partner with us. They've asked us to help with them. I'm so pleased with agency partnerships and coordination around here. And then of course we have members of the Oregon State Police SWAT team here. They've been another great partner, great source of information, advice, and co-instruction. As a matter of fact, our office, Captain Paul Garrison, he is part of the Tactical Command Council for the Oregon State Sheriff's Association, who has conducted now for 3 years statewide tactical operations, basic SWAT schools, because it was getting difficult to try and find locations to get that training. Some organizations only recognize certain individuals to be on a tactical team, and so we just created our own training. He's been very active in that. As a matter of fact, he's won a couple of awards from the Oregon State Sheriff's Association for Tactical Command, Council, and Training. But all the agencies help with that. State police, local PDs, and sheriff's offices, of course, help put that on together so we get the best trained people for public safety. And when you talk about equipment for a tactical team, I'm going to tell you, you need to have rescue armor capability, because you do not want to have a Dodge Charger patrol car out there if you're dealing with an armed or barricaded subject. You want the law enforcement officers protected, and if you need to go in and get those family members, you've got to have a way to do it. I heard from a deputy chief, Springfield, Missouri, who spoke at a conference, who said they had to commandeer a garbage truck and bring that to a scene because they were taking, they were taking rounds. People were the person was firing rounds at their cars. So you need that type of special equipment, and that's the benefit of those members of the SWAT team. That extra training, the fact they sign up for that additional responsibility and do extra training on these specialized tools and equipment, their value is out in the everyday shifts, working the everyday calls. And if you need to put together a mini tactical team response, we usually can do that very quickly with the Central Oregon Emergency Response Team members, state police SWAT team members, and our office team members, and no matter where the call is. So they work in great partnership together. And I know there's been a lot of discussion about our SWAT team, and the fact of the matter is our SWAT team was formed under Sheriff Larry Blanton after discussions had been had with Sheriff Les Stiles, because we needed a specialized team that could respond inside our jail. There's a number of procedures and rules and laws that will apply to having weapons in jails. You might remember there's some case law where a canine unit and how it can be used in a jail setting on an inmate, because these are individuals that are not free to go. These are individuals that are in our care and custody. And so you want specialized training. It costs me and the taxpayers and the sheriff's office the same amount, whether we have our own SWAT team or whether we are part of a multi-agency SWAT team. So I never want to say we don't have a SWAT team available. And the CERT team works very hard, but there were 3 occasions when Sheriff Blanton didn't have access to the tactical team because they were on another mission, and rightfully so. And so we always want to be prepared for the worst. You hope for the best, be prepared for the worst. So he started our tactical team, and then of course these are Sheriff's Office personnel who are in line with mission and values, and that's no offense to anybody else's mission and values, but they are our teammates. They know our philosophy, they know our approach. So this works very well at the same investment of taxpayer money, and we have great partners and great tactical teams that we learn from in the region, and CERT and OSP are 2 of them, and they do a great job.
Great. So the Sheriff's Office has found creative ways to support some folks without homes in our community, thinking about the warming shelter. You guys hosted that last year in your facility, and then of course the Space for the Veterans Village underway. What's your personal philosophy around how social issues relate to your work? So solving social concerns.
That's our job. When I look at it from a sheriff's office standpoint, the folks I work with, my teammates at the sheriff's office and we signed up for selfless public service, and that's what we do. And I always say at the end of the day, we have a mission statement and we believe in it. You know, proudly serving our community by providing superior public safety and customer service. That's what we do. But it also comes down to, it's our job to enhance the livability and maintain the livability of this community. That's why we have our inmate work crews out, and right now our work crew deputy sheriffs that pick up litter and cover up graffiti, because that lends to livability. And then you also want to maintain public safety. And part of livability is enhancing individual circumstances. And when you talk about these folks, you want to give them the hand up to get back on track, to being as productive of a citizen as they can be. And listen, sometimes in the homeless or the transient population, you of course have addiction issues. You of course have behavioral health issues. You have, maybe you have folks that just don't follow the law and they want to, you know, be off the grid. You have others that choose to be off the grid. But there is a time and a place, and we all have to follow the laws. And so we try and be proactive in that realm and find, how can we give a hand up? Because our work crews have been out and cleaned up some of these sites, and we've seen the human waste that can be a public health issue. We've seen the needles and the discarded booze bottles and the trash. And so we really try and balance that, and it is tough to do for the community to balance that. But one of the easiest ways we could do it was when Commissioner Henderson called and said, hey, the commission and I were approached by Homeless Leadership Coalition, and they said, you're in the middle of a remodel and deciding how your office is going to expand the programs. And I said, right time, right place. And so that was one way where we could open that up so they could have the warming shelter. And then you get the folks that are utilizing the warming shelter, and it gives you an opportunity to plug them into other resources and plug them into other services so that you can hopefully start that forward momentum to help get them back on track. And I'm so excited about the Veterans Village. I'm friends with Buffy Bunger, who is making arrangements to try and get some of the housing there for lowered cost, and of course friends with Colonel Dick and his son Eric Tobiasen, Sam Davis, and the people that are trying to move that forward. And our nation's veterans, those women and men, fought for this country and fought for our freedoms. And I have family members who were veterans and very, very proud they served. And if they hadn't have done their job serving us in the military, I wouldn't be able to do my job back home. And our ladies and gentlemen wouldn't be able to do their job back home. And so any bit we can do for those folks who served our country and are combating whatever challenge they might be combating, whether it be behavioral health or post-traumatic stress, and rightfully so, combating that, or an addiction or a substance abuse issue. I know the Veterans Village is going to be very careful about who they allow in the program, but that's going to be a great way to have a path to bridge the gap to services. And that's what we try and do at the Stabilization Center. Mobile Crisis Assessment Team is doing a wonderful job there. Bridge the gap, because no one's going to maybe take you up on your first offer of more in-depth services, but you know what? When you see them 3 or 4 times and you develop a relationship, they might take you up on that offer later.
Yeah. So that brings us to just talking about the jail and your overall philosophy around, is jail a place for punishment or rehabilitation?
I think you have a blend of both. Listen, I truly believe in having laws and following the laws. And I'll tell you, we also believe in using discretion as you apply that, because we want to know the backstory, right? We stop an individual for speeding, and we find out, hey, they're just coming from a loved one who passed away in the hospital. You have to take all of these things into account when you figure out how's the best way to serve them. What are you going to do that will make this a positive interaction? It's easy to write a ticket and have a fine, but what have you done with that fine? You do have to have a consequence to something, because that is what keeps us within our bounds. But when you take a look at a fine, is there a different way for someone to learn their lesson? Sometimes it is a fine. They have to have that financial consequence. When you look at jail, jail is the consequence. But we have folks that are in our care and custody, and we provide programs. Restart, there's Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous. There are those treatment programs with peers where they can arrange to have a peer or mentor after jail and get into a program, and we've had success with that. We have food handlers cards so that they have something when they go back out into the job market. CPR certification, CPR first aid, help with resumes, all the parenting programs, all these programs that are accessible to folks, and a lot of folks take us up on those programs. One of the things that I would like to see us get, and we just have to have a little bit more bandwidth, because we're adding some behavioral health specialists to better serve the stabilization center and our programming in the jail, because we are seeing a lot of behavioral health challenges. But we also want to have them available to partner up with the mobile crisis assessment team to go out in the field, because maybe on every call we don't necessarily need a uniform to be the first response. And other communities have tried it and been successful. Eugene's tried it, has a very successful program. And so we're looking at that, and those folks can go out, and if there's a concern over safety, well, of course our deputy sheriffs can go. Our deputy sheriffs are trained in de-escalation and diffusing, and a lot of times their cover's a long way away, and you learn how to visit and communicate with people, which is something we do 100% of the time. But I would like to increase the programming in the jail where we could have some behavioral health programs that were dorm specific. We've been changing the setting of the dorms, and it's something that would cost us the same whether we painted it one color or another, but trying to change the paint color, trying to have different types of furniture that's still corrections setting safe furniture, but your surroundings can do a lot for your attitude. And look, it's not only the inmates we serve in the jail, but it's the teammates I work with. They're spending their shifts within our facility as well. And so you have that surrounding, that environmental factor as just to help uplift, but that you do that in conjunction with everything else you have going together with, of course, hiring the right people to represent your sheriff's office. But I would like to invest more to have dorm-specific programming.
So we are in the midst of a pandemic. We're taking some extra precautions just to show, the public that we care about this issue.
Yes, my mask is right here, by the way.
That's right.
I felt it important, and I appreciate the physical distance, but I felt it important. I mean, I'm speaking to my 200,000 bosses. I want them to see my face. So.
And we absolutely agree with that, and that's why we want to make it, I mask, then you don't have to. But in the jail setting, the approach has been to try to minimize the population in the jail. Can you just, share that approach and, your perspective on that?
And that's not just something done here within our sheriff's office. We're part of the Jail Command Council for the Oregon State Sheriff's Association. They have a great raft. Good raft, gentlemen. River rat. But part of that serving in that capacity is we have access to all the sheriff's offices in the state through the Oregon State Sheriff's Association. And it's a national conversation as well. And so we took it upon ourselves to try and adjust who we would accept in custody, because we did want to lower the numbers. Look, COVID-19, and it's part of the reason we haven't been able to expand some of the programming in the jail as well, because of the pandemic. But COVID-19, we weren't quite sure what to expect. We want to prepare for the worst. I already said that. We hope for the best, prepare for the worst. And we wanted to reduce our numbers because you want to be able to try and have that capability to physically distance should we need to, or should we had someone come down with the illness, or should you have an outbreak, because that's highly possible when you're dealing with human beings. We're combating a virus we can't see. And so you just want to prepare for it. So in that setting, they're all wearing masks, they're offering masks, and inmate workers are wearing masks and have the capability, should we need to go to single cell or I don't like to call it isolation because that's not a good term in the corrections setting. And I don't believe isolation is really a good term in any setting, but physically distancing. You want to be able to physically distance and definitely allow for that opportunity, and that's what we encourage. We encourage the same physical distancing now that our numbers are lower, and of course encourage mask use.
So I have heard some feedback from community members concerned about having more individuals who might in their eyes, need to be in the jail out in the general public. And so what's your take on that?
My response on that is we have not seen a huge rise in any type of criminal activity, and that might have been because of COVID. Early on, we saw a higher rise in some domestic violence cases, but at the end of the day, if someone belongs in jail, we're going to make sure they are incarcerated in the jail. And that's something that we visited with our agency partners and let them know that we're not going to refuse someone. If you feel there's a reason, you just let us know there's a reason and you want them to be lodged, and we will take care of it. It comes down to public safety and balancing that. And you balance that with, okay, we have a pandemic, but you also balance it with, hey, listen, we don't want individuals who will be dangerous to the community to also be back out in the community. So we are constantly balancing that.
Yeah. So we had some recent activity with Immigrations and Customs Enforcement in Bend.
Yes.
This was obviously a big deal for a lot of community members.
Right.
I'd like you first to just share your overall perspective on sanctuary law in Oregon.
So I'll just speak from Sheriff's Office experience. So the way we look at it is, I'm not a federal law enforcement officer. I don't enforce federal law, neither does our Sheriff's Office. We operate within the bounds of Oregon law as we go through our interactions with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. I'll tell you, Immigration and Customs Enforcement is a key law enforcement partner. Our federal partners are someone that we want to make sure we maintain communication with, because they may be aware of a public safety issue that I'm not. And so as we operate within the bounds of the law, we do report foreign-born citizens, as well as make sure foreign-born citizens get their lawfully deserved connection with their consulate of their country of origin. So there are things that we want to make sure we give all individuals in the community. Now, at the end of the day, our only nexus with Immigrations and Customs Enforcement comes through the jail. Mm-hmm. So it's an individual who has either been arrested on a warrant or has been arrested for probable cause to commit a crime. And probable cause is a standard that, I mean, more likely than not, that crime was committed, even though it remains an allegation. So at the end of the day, for me, it's about public safety. And I cannot even imagine what it must be like for families to lose a family member. But if we go about things the right way and we follow the law in our attempts to get there, I've got two friends who just received their citizenship over the last couple of years. I mean, they're great friends, they're great supporters. They worked hard to get where they were. And I'm so pleased. They both let our families know when they were doing it. So I am very, very happy they attained that, because I know the work that they had to put in for that. And one of them's a local business owner and does a tremendous job.
So I just want to unpack this just a tiny bit. So the Sheriff's Office, or through the jail, is sending a daily report to Immigrations and Customs Enforcement regarding foreign-born citizens.
Yes, we report foreign-born citizens in our custody.
And that, under my understanding, is a voluntary action on behalf of the Sheriff's Office.
Correct. That's a voluntary action on behalf of our office. It does abide by Oregon law, and it's something that I want to do in the interest of public safety. I want to make sure our federal partners know who we have in our custody, because they may be working on something I'm not familiar with, or our office is not familiar with.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we started kind of with a critique of the Sheriff's Office, giving you an opportunity to do that. I want you to now think about, before I give you an opportunity to just talk about whatever you want to talk about, to just think about any personal missteps or regrets you might have about, things that you personally have experienced in your career.
I think there's a number of missteps or regrets in my career and anyone else's. I shared that I'm good at learning lessons, and I firmly believe that. Throughout my career, I've had a lot of challenges, and my teammates in the office and my family have helped us rise to those challenges and overcome them. I'll look back, and some of the things that are first and foremost is I wish I could have handled some of the personnel challenges more quickly. but sometimes that's not in our control if you have an outside individual investigating that case. But I would have liked to have found the embezzling from a former captain that we had sooner. And I always I view these things and I just try and see how I can be better as an individual, how I can be a better sheriff, how I can implement things to make our community a better place. But there's a number of things, and on any given day I can tell you there's mistakes I've made. But one thing's for sure is when I make a mistake, my face is the first face people will see. I work for them, and they've seen it. So I hope I've proved by my actions that I'm not perfect. I make errors, and I am more than happy to admit my mistakes and our office mistakes and just promise that we'll try and be better at what we do.
So is there anything we haven't talked about that you'd like to discuss?
I want to visit just a little bit more about serving as sheriff, but the fact that your teammates who are in the office are crucial to delivering that service, because I'm the least important person in that organization. The folks that are doing the hard work on a daily basis, whether it's answering our phones, serving papers, walking our jail floor, patrolling in a patrol car, keeping our facilities maintained, those are the folks that are doing the work. Those are the folks that are doing the work that is seen by our bosses. And I'll go back, and I ran 4 years ago, and just really wanted to share the resume for what I felt would be a good individual to serve in that sheriff's office, and just make sure that my bosses were represented in that office. Look, I'm well aware when my bosses don't feel I should be the one representing them, they're going to let me know, and I will respect that all day long, because I work for them and I take that very seriously. But if I didn't have terrific and wonderful people working in that sheriff's office with me, I wouldn't be here representing you as your sheriff today. That election had a time when a lot of personnel challenges and a lot of not so good news about the sheriff's office were of course centered around the sheriff, and rightfully so. When I became the sheriff, I accepted all 100 years of that sheriff's offices. And I truly believe that, because I serve as the sheriff. And when we look at it from a standpoint that it's just when business arises, we take care of business. Sometimes you don't know about it, and that's fine. It's what you do after you're made aware of the situation. But I'm telling you, the 240 teammates that I have that I work closely with every day, they are the ones that made sure we came out excellent on the tail end of that. And my wife and my kids, great support, and my family members and friends, and my teammates, spouses and kids and family members and friends. You multiply that with our volunteers, and you're talking thousands strong. And that's how we deliver the service that we deliver to our bosses, and that's how we make sure we be better at what we do.
Well, running a campaign is difficult and challenging, and so we always like to just thank everyone who's running, and thank you for taking part in the democratic process, and for being here with us today.
You're welcome.